There are some things I really love about the system.
It feels like it is not per Mercedes quality standard.
You'll notice that this reminds me of the Windows Media Player.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a mark of luxury, really.
Welcome back to another episode of HMI Experts in Cars. Today we have a lovely weather, as you can see around us, full of sun. So we're happy to be seated in this very well air-conditioned Mercedes EQE. I was very hyped to get this car here in our garage, but upon closer inspection, it leaves a lot to wish for. People make fun of Tesla for build quality, but I mean, this EQE really feels like it is not per Mercedes quality standards.
Yeah, it feels like a Tesla.
We have a couple of friends that are working with us that drive A-Class, and they say the build quality is a bit better in their cars. Pressing things around, it's very squeaky. You, Shrivas, what are your impressions?
I mean, like I said, also in the case of the BMW i7, that it was a, let's say, budget Rolls-Royce. This is definitely a budget EQS, and it shows. So we had the EQS 580 Plus first edition, which had the hyper screen, which arguably I was a little whining about it because I was not a fan of all the buttons being removed minus a few. This has the same system. But having used the EQS and now sitting with the EQE, I think I can say that to a fair extent you can do a bunch of things straight off the corner of your eye, I guess. Because that's the biggest gripe with touchscreens and all touchscreen system. You got to take your eyes off the road. But what I like about the Mercedes is that it has very clear touch targets. It has very big icons. Everything is big. Until you start to go into the menus, and we'll come to that next. But for the most part, I quite like this system. The colors are muted, you know, it's not in your face. There's a dark blue color scheme going on over here. Sometimes you can change some things and add some more colors, but yeah, overall I feel positive about the system in general.
Well, I've spent so much time in the EQS back then that I'm quite used to it now, so it's hard to say first impressions.
Yeah.
It's a bit of shame that, you know, little alignment things and interior is squeaky. Other than that, I mean, it's a wonderful car. We've driven it a bit today already.
But it's a good segue into another point that I wanted to raise with you. What do you think of the touch controls on the steering wheel? I feel like for my big hands and fingers, they're a bit small. How has your experience been with those touch controls when you're driving the car?
First of all, the architecture. So if you will understand that left side is for the instrument cluster and then the right side is for the head unit, you're pretty safe with navigating your way through all the menus.
Yeah.
I remember that the first time I sat in the EQS, it took me a while to figure out which it does what.
Yeah.
Because I felt like we sat from the BMW or another vehicle.
It was a Taycan.
Or maybe the Porsche, yeah, and it was just so different. Although the same, obviously, they're all quite similar, but it was different to the point where I was confused of what to do, and I kept switching the IC instead of the head unit. But now, since I know, it's quite easy, but maybe my hands are a bit too small for the controls, because I feel like sometimes I'm stretching my thumb, if you can say. I'm doing a lot of stretching and maybe it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
But mind you, we have the AMG wheel in this particular model.
The optional wheel.
Yeah, the optional wheel. So your experience with the regular version might be completely different.
I recall that on the EQS you didn't have to stretch this much.
No.
I think over here it feels a little bit like a PlayStation controller, you know, when for me I have to stretch my hands really to access the controls.
True. If I would have to verdict, I would say it's a bit too much.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we've tested vehicles where there was not enough control from the steering wheel
Yeah, like
into
the
the
ID3,
system.
I remember.
Yeah, I mean, give or take.
The other question that obviously comes to mind is how have you felt using the climate control when driving? Because the cars that you and me are used to, you turn a knob and there's no knob here to turn.
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of adjusting mirrors like we have done
With the
with the Smart Hash 1,
Yeah.
where I believe we were a bit misunderstood. Yes, it was confusing, but we did underline the point that how often do you actually adjust the mirrors?
Yeah, but you do adjust the climate control.
But you
a lot
do
more
adjust
often.
the climate control a bit more. In this case, there's a separate menu on the main display. But being in a group of old school drivers, although my age wouldn't indicate it, that's how fast the tech is moving.
Yeah.
I would really prefer the climate buttons to be hard keys rather than touch.
I agree. I mean, in my view, in my experience, you know, the climate was set into auto, and I don't know why I took so long to figure out where it's right there. But I was playing with the fan, I was playing with the temperature until I realized that the auto is on, and you don't notice that it's on and it's right there. I think it brings us back to the point that we had with the Smart, you know. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with certain things. In that case, it was the mirror. We had, of course, the point that we don't turn the mirrors that often. But I feel like when it comes to things like climate, a simple button is just, or a wheel, is just amazing at doing the job that it does. And you can do it in an aesthetic manner, and the best example for this is probably the Genesis. You know, they have a nice touch screen, and they also have physical buttons for the climate control. So I feel like let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's enable the driver to use their most used functions from the corner of their eye or without even looking at the system. What I like in this car though is that it has a mute button. You know, it has a button for the mute and it has a button for the volume. So I'm quite happy that at least that has not been sent into the touchscreen. But there are other pointers that comes into mind, you know. One thing that I found rather interesting is when you put the car into reverse gear, you cannot access the rest of the system. It forces you to be in the camera, and it depends how you see it. I see it in a positive way because to me it sounds like you're making the driver focus on the task they're doing and not mess with the music controls when they're taking a reverse. You know?
That is very true. As long as we have the mirrors outside, they're not digital.
Yeah.
I believe this should be a setting maybe that you can switch off.
I was doing some tests, like some expert evaluations with this car for a specific project. What I found out was that there was always a little bit of confusion as to where to find the apps, because in a screen like this, which kind of goes in the direction of mimicking a tablet device, you know, you're looking for apps like the BMW iX i7 has very explicit an apps icon. You go inside it, you see vehicle apps, infotainment apps. It has too many apps, that's another thing. But here you need to press the home button to open the apps, and that's a little bit funny because you expect the home button to bring you back to the home, you know. So small things like this, I feel like if Mercedes is able to improve it. But I think other than that, when it comes to the HMI itself, like I said, there are some things I really love about the system. The big touch targets, to me, I prefer this over the gazillion apps that you see in the Chinese OEM,
or even the BMW,
or the BMW iX for that matter, iX i7. It's very clear, like you cannot make too many mistakes when it comes to touching these things. It's the same with the climate control. While I prefer the buttons and the knobs, I think this is really not a bad implementation.
No, not at all.
It's a decent implementation.
It's a totally different approach to Bavarian cars, but it works, and it works quite well.
Works quite well.
And once you, like with most of these systems, once you get into the ecosystem and you learn, you know where everything else situated.
Yeah, fair enough.
Obviously, we're doing first impressions, and we can sit into 7 different cars in a week time.
We switch a lot of cars, by the way.
So we do get to experience quite a bit. And even in the i7, we were overwhelmed by the amount of additional gadgets, just because it's a limousine and it's, you know, tailored for someone else than we usually drive. Overall, minus the build quality, I'm super satisfied with the MBUX experience.
Yeah.
For sure, if I would be considering in that price range, the Star would be in my budget.
Definitely. As an Easter egg, one of our colleagues pointed it out and I remembered it. If you were a kid that grew up in the early 2000s, you'll notice that this reminds me of the Windows Media Player.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
We were having a laugh about this. We really love this car. We think it's a great vehicle to be in. We did not expect the creakiness and the loose bits and so on, but I think that comes with the initial batch of any car. I think it's somewhere between the average Mercedes-Benz, which is built like a tank, and a Tesla. I mean, when you close the doors, you still hear the solid thud. The touchscreen feels robust, the interiors feel robust, there's leather, there's Alcantara. It's such a premium place to be in. It has some shortcomings. I was a little disappointed with the lever to move the seat front and back. Come on, it's 80,000 euros and you have the button for the rest of the adjustments, but just going front and back, you use a lever, it feels almost like a 1995 Mercedes-Benz, you know. Jokes apart, do check out this car and other vehicles on our Screens YouTube channel. Head over to screensauto.com to benchmark your favorite vehicle infotainment systems. What is also interesting for you guys is that we are now launching a podcast that is releasing soon.
Let me start a bit differently.
Rapid thought, which later evolved.
Also here, I think is a question.
Yes, absolutely.
For me, what would catch me the most?
We've been speaking with experts in the automotive industry about infotainment, about the future of mobility, about so many exciting topics. We've had some truly remarkable guests on the podcast so far, and it's dropping very, very soon. Make sure to check out the podcast. I've co-hosted one of the episodes. And on that note, I'm Shrivas.
Tom.
And this has been another episode of Experts in Cars. See you in the next one.